Hey everyone, and thank you for joining me today for another episode of What Are You Going to Do About It? Today, I'm excited to introduce to you today one of my oldest friends. Actually, you're probably my oldest friend now that I can think about it. It's nearly 4 decades, which we'll just leave that alone. So we don't want to use ourselves. But we have Johnathan McGinty. He is a father, a husband, and he recently started his own business. I'll let him talk to you about that. But Johnathan, the premise of the show is very simple. As you know, we ask 3 simple questions. What was the problem? How did you identify it? And what did you do about it? So without further ado, why don't you tell our guests a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what that problem was for you.
Sure. Well, thanks a ton for having me on. I think I was telling my wife about this. You are probably one of the people I've known the longest in my life, so I'm excited we can catch up here. I live over in the Athens, Georgia area the night after Georgia won the national championship,
Woo-hoo!
Speaking of 4 decades, so we're excited about that.
Go Dogs!
Exactly. But I work in public relations. I have a small shop with one of my best friends, Joe Van Hoos. He and I were colleagues at a previous agency and had always kind of joked about starting our own shop, and it's called Trestle Collective. We do your basic blocking and tackling PR. We do copywriting, a lot of content creation, communication strategy. We've been very blessed to see a good bit of growth, and we're excited about that. Like I said, I have a daughter, Emma Kate, who's a freshman. I've got a wife, Julie. We were married 20 years in December, so we are.
Wow! Congratulations!
Thank you. So,
not
but yeah,
that often.
It has been good so far. Very minimal fights. We seem to like each other, which is good.
That's awesome. All right, so let's get into it. Why don't you tell us what your problem was? And also, sometimes when we're in the midst of things, we have a difficult time of getting to that point where we're like, okay, this is a problem and I need to do something about it. So why don't you tell us what the problem was and what happened that made you say, okay, this is a problem?
Sure. So, I got my start professionally as a sports writer. I was a journalist. It was what I always wanted to do when I was growing up as a kid. I worked at the Athens Banner-Herald here in Athens and stuck around, and I loved it. It was a blast. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then I transitioned to PR because the journalist lifestyle is great when you're single. It's not so great when you're married, so I was looking for a change. Loved PR, worked at various places, and got on at an agency. And I want to be very clear and transparent. It's a great agency. I love the people there. I learned so much there, and I spent 10 years there. I think the problem, and it's interesting to call it a problem, but at some point in my late 30s, I'm 43 now, late 30s, I began feeling not as fulfilled professionally. And I don't think that was the fault of anybody but my own. I think I had just reached a ceiling, but you don't know you reached that ceiling. And I remember I listened to, actually of all things, it was comedians in cars getting coffee, and it was Alec Baldwin and Jerry Seinfeld, and they were talking about Alec Baldwin turning 50 or something. This is X number of years ago. And he said, I have a list of things that I want to do, and it's getting shorter, but those things that are on there, I have to do. And as I approached 40, I began thinking, there are some things that I want to do or have the opportunity to do, and I don't know what they are just yet, but I don't know if I can find them on this path that I'm on. I have a friend who told me, you're having a minor midlife crisis, but you don't really call it. But you're not calling it a midlife crisis, but you totally get it. And so that was sort of where we were. I mean, it wasn't as if I wasn't necessarily progressing or I didn't have good mentors. It was just, I felt like there was something more for me. But the challenge was I didn't even know it was a problem at the time.
I hate that term midlife crisis because I actually posted about this a couple of weeks ago. It's really not a midlife crisis. Like, that term is so negative. It's a reprioritization. It's reprioritizing like those things that are important to you in life. It's realizing that time is not infinite. and there are
Right.
things you want to do. So yeah, I wish we could just rebrand that or get it out the way, something, just get rid of that term.
Oh yeah, yeah, and and like I said, it wasn't even necessarily a negative thing. It was just more of that I recognized that there was something lacking. There was something else I wanted to do. So I hadn't even really looked for new jobs. I every once in a while I would have a recruiter contact me, or something would come across, if I was on LinkedIn or something. But this is how I really identified what the problem was and began thinking about what to do with it. Is there was an opportunity, another job opportunity. And like I said, I was personally very happy at where I was. I loved the people, still do, consider all of them really good friends. But there was a great opportunity, a quote unquote dream job, if you will. And I got real excited about it. I went through several month interview process, was a finalist, and even being able to go to this place and travel there and interview for the job all day as a finalist, that was checking off, a bucket list item for me.
Right.
Felt pretty good. Like, I felt like I gave everything I had. This was as good as I could do in this interview. And a week goes by, I didn't hear anything. 2 weeks go by and I didn't hear anything. And they eventually contacted me and said they were very impressed with me, and they were very gracious. They said something to the effect of, it wasn't 1A, or it wasn't 1 and 2, it was 1A and 1B, and we chose and went in a different direction. I don't know if I was depressed after that, because I think that's a very powerful word, and I want to be respectful when I use it. But I definitely was disappointed, and that disappointment lingered with me for quite a while. I remember just going home and telling my wife I didn't get it, and just washing my hands like I do when I come in, because I'm kind of a clean freak. And I just began to cry at the sink, and that was weird. Like, I don't normally, I might get choked up like watching the end of Glory or something like that, but I don't cry over things like that impact me per se. And I think I kind of walked around in the fog, which only exacerbated the problem. But the benefit of that was, because it exacerbated it, then I was able to recognize what it was. Okay, perfect. So what I did after that was kind of bold. I went through a few months of being kind of in a funk, and I reached out to the guy who had passed on me and was down at the other job, and said, I'd love to just go get coffee with you one day. I really liked you. I thought I would have enjoyed working for you, but more than that, I think you're a good person. And I had coffee with this guy, and I think he probably was impressed with how bold I was in that request. And, I don't even think I asked him, why didn't you pick me? I didn't want to know that. I thought he was a good person to know. And he just opened up about how impressed he was with me. And I began telling him about some of the frustrations I was feeling professionally. And I wanted to pick his brain a bit as we were sitting there. And he said, and I remember this has stuck with me. I can just hear him saying it clear as day. He said, you're dynamic and you can go do anything you want. Now, this isn't to say I didn't get positive affirmation or good mentorship from other colleagues or coworkers or what have you, but to have someone you didn't really know and give you that type of affirmation in a purely professional sense, I just hadn't gotten that in a while, I felt like. And it led me to start to think, okay, I can do something else. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to start making a plan. Okay. So with that, what did you do about it? Well, after I came home and kind of bragged to my wife a bit, I was able to sit down and think, okay, what I miss is the doing. As you, and I'm sure you can relate working in the communications marketing space, as you progress in your career, you get further away from the doing. Yep. And what I loved about being a reporter way back when was writing. I loved telling a good story. I loved that whole process of the interviews or covering a game or what have you. And I wanted to get back to the equivalent of that in the public relations marketing space. So I began thinking about, okay, who are people I know who are doing something similar, whether it's at another place or if it's a guy who's out on his own or what have you. And I began having those conversations. And I began to think, okay, I'm going to build a plan for me to go out on my own. I'll be a freelancer. I'll start a small shop. I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to be, it'll be a couple years down the road. But I began making that plan for me to do. Talked to my wife. We began saving money because I'm married to a CPA, and she's smart and she's cautious. So we had a 5-year plan in place, more or less. And then a funny thing happened. A global pandemic hit. And that just impacted where I worked at. And they had to make some tough but ultimately necessary business decisions. And, they had to let some people go. And I was one of those folks. And again, I don't hold any ill will. They were in a tough spot. And, I'm still close with all of them. And I remember feeling awful for them that they had to make this choice. But that's one of those little moments where the good Lord's looking out for you to say, okay, it may not be 5 years. It may be more like 1 year. So I had to just push play on that plan that I had. And it coincided with one of my best friends moving back up to Athens, Joe, and that little idea we would kick around 6-7 years ago about let's do our own thing, because he was out on his own now. We had to make it go a little faster. So we put together a very rudimentary business plan, and just through good people, we're able to pick up some clients, and we've been able to grow. And again, I can sit where I am now, and we still have a long way to go, but I can look back to that where I was and go, oh yeah, I get it now. I get why I was in that funk all then, because I have so much more balance and so much more clarity and so much more professional joy in what I'm doing.
I think one of the important things that you mentioned is that you wrote it down. I think, whether you're a Christian, I think the Bible says, write down the vision, write it down and make it clear. And then when you hear from so many professionals, motivational speakers, they always talk about the importance of getting it down on paper. So it sounds like that was really, your thought process was the first part of it, but getting it down on paper was really the change. That's when you saw it.
It really was. And, at the beginning, it was probably just, a sticky note here and a scrap piece of paper there. But what I began to do is think through, I've got to organize these thoughts into a more coherent fashion. And I'm a big, I need pen and paper. So I had one of those big landscape pads, and I began doing little columns and just mapping things out. And I would do goals and objectives, and I had a list of people I should know and all of that stuff. And I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of people who were colleagues, whether they were at the previous agency or other opportunities or other, former clients, what have you, who were interested in making their own decisions similar to like what I had to do. And I've given them all that advice. Sit down, make a list of everybody you know, make a list of what you want out of this. Is it more money? Is it better work-life balance? I was speaking with somebody who she's going to help us out with a project. And she said, I wanted to buy my time back. I've got 2 small children. I wanted to have 20 hours for work. I wanted to have 20 hours plus for me and my family. And once you realize what that is, all the other stuff starts to kind of fall in place beneath it. But you're right. I mean, if you don't jot it down, the other thing I did, and this is unintentional plug for them, is I got one of the bullet journal manual, like the little bullet journal, and I read that, and that has really helped me. Each day I get up, I prioritize what I'm going to do, I cross-reference with the day before, I jot down journal entries. That was one of the things I wanted to do, and that helps give me clarity and focus for each day. So if it's I'm a big believer in putting pen to paper on that type of stuff.
Awesome. And so now you have this successful organization. Like you said, you have a long way to go, but you've already come so far in such a short amount of time. What advice, I guess, would you give to people who are experiencing that midlife crisis period in their lives?
I think 2 things. One is practical and one is more philosophical. I think the practical one is to make the plan, and that requires talking to people, find people. I mean, one of the other things I did is I just reached out to people, some of them I didn't even know, and just said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. I saw you on LinkedIn. I've loved your post, or I read this article by you. And you'd be surprised at how many people will, 9 out of 10 will say, yeah, let's grab coffee or let's hop on a Zoom in today's day and age. So that's, I think put a plan so you can start to envision where you want to go. The philosophical thing, and I don't want to belittle anyone's individual circumstances, because each person has their own obstacles and challenges and barriers to face. But the biggest thing is, and I know this now sitting where I am, is don't let fear of the unknown stop you. I probably thought for several times over the past 15 plus years of my life, I should go do X, but I didn't, because I didn't know what was around the corner. Or if I do this, maybe I lose this client. Or if I do this, I'm not going to get this opportunity on this team at this agency to do this. Or if I leave the agency and go out on my own, I'm leaving this salary and this stability, and I don't know what is next. The thing that I've realized, and I think part of this is just getting older, is there's always that uncertainty, but you'll figure it out if you got good people with you and if you got a good head on your shoulders. This could all fall apart tomorrow for me, and then I'll just figure out something else to do. Maybe I have to go work somewhere else. Maybe I just start up something new. Who knows? But just don't let that fear of the unknown be something which holds you back. And then you sit back 15, 20 years later and think, gosh, why didn't I do that?
Yep. I think it's faith, and it's betting on yourself. Understanding that everything you need, you already have. So absolutely. Thank you. This was awesome. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited that you're doing this. I loved the first episode that I watched. I'm glad to be included in the mix, and I'm really, we need to reconnect more than just doing this too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. But this hopefully will help so many people who are kind of stuck and, just trying to figure out, okay, what's my next step? What do I want to do with my life? And so that was the whole kind of push behind this video, is that, again, maybe people will watch your video and be inspired. They may not necessarily use the same blueprint, but hopefully this will spark something in them to make some changes in their lives. And that's all I could hope for. So thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. I was glad to.
All right. Why don't you tell everyone how to connect with you, and also get in contact with your business if they need some PR and comms needs?
Absolutely. So you can go to TrestleCollective.com is our website. It's in the process of being updated right now. So it's a tad out of date, but you should be able to track our emails down there. You can reach me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Johnathan McGinty, and I have an H in my name, JOHNATHAN. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually on there a couple of times a day. And then Johnathan at Trestle Collective, JOHNATHAN, Johnathan at TrestleCollective.com is my email.
Awesome. All right, guys. So just like you said, a lot of people, he reached out to a lot of people and they helped him. Hey, you have a resource here. He's giving you his information. So if you need some help, be sure to reach out to him. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I can remember like it was yesterday, us sitting in elementary classes, laughing, joking, probably picking our noses because we're so young. Who knows?
I was telling somebody, I remember driving you home, I think after yearbook staff a couple of times in high school too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I forgot about that. Anyway, we'll end this trip down memory lane and save it for another time. All right. Thank you again. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting. Remember to hit subscribe and also share this video with as many people as you can. I appreciate your time. And again, just think about, what are you going to do about it? Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.